one of the accusations that Evan Rachel Wood is making in this documentary that's coming out this weekend, the HBO documentary, Phoenix Rising. One of the big allegations she's making is apparently that when she was pregnant with Marilyn Manson's child, she had an abortion. And right after she got the abortion, she claims that Manson demanded that she cook dinner for him. And this has gotten a lot of news, a lot of write-ups this week about this. And this is like one of the big things that's been revealed, I guess, to kind of get people excited about this documentary that HBO has coming out. Because this was one of the things in their promo that they sent out was Evan Rachel Wood, a scene of Evan Rachel Wood talking about this abortion thing. She makes other claims as well in this clip that Manson drugged her and so forth. But I wanted to talk to someone who's already been a guest on my show, and it was one of the more interesting interviews that I've done since I started this whole thing. I'm going to be talking to Manzin, not to be confused with Manson. I'll try to really emphasize that Z when I'm talking, as people know who I'm talking about. But Manzin, he is a Marilyn Manson impersonator, an artist. There's probably a lot of other things, right? How you would describe yourself.
A lot of other things. I've got a shit ton of hats. Lots of hats.
Yeah, no, seriously. So anyway, we already did an interview, and it was a long interview. We talked about your background with Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood, how you were friends with them. You spent time with them in a very sort of cozy, intimate atmosphere. You've been around them, one-on-one. You've hung out, in at home or in an apartment environment with them. You've done drugs with them. You've partied. I mean, I've been up late at night, intoxicated, all of this stuff, right?
The whole kit and the caboodle.
The whole kit and the caboodle, exactly. And so I guess I just want to start off right off the bat because look, last time you were here, you really dropped a bomb in that interview. You talked about this abortion thing, but you had a very different story to tell than what Evan Rachel Wood is saying now. So I'm curious. Was Evan Rachel Wood, was she pregnant? Did she have an abortion? And how do you know about any of this?
I was living in New York City at the time. I was in Brooklyn, and Manson would come to town. He usually would stop in New York. He had a connection that he would go to Europe, and he would occasionally spend a couple of days in New York just to do promo and press and that kind of thing. And he texted me. I woke up one day, I had a bunch of texts from him, and he's like, "Hey, I'm in New York. I'm in Tribeca. Can you, do you want to hang out? Can you come over?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, cool." So I go over there. He was in some sort of, he told me to pick him up in an apartment. It was an apartment in Tribeca. And he's like, "Yeah, Evan's out, but she'll be back soon." And he seemed sort of a little off. And he's like, "Yeah, she had an abortion." And I was like, just, "Hello, how are you?" I don't even know if was it fiance at that time. I don't know. My fiance's.
He told you that. He told you that straight out, very just sort of. And I know you're friends with him and everything, right? But very sort of straight out.
I think he might have just been looking a little odd. I'm usually pretty in tune with how he's feeling, and if he seems a little off, I'll be like, "Hey, you good? Are you okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, He's like, Evan's having an abortion," and I was like, "Oh," and I didn't want to ask like, is it whose baby is it? I didn't want to get too invasive because it's a super personal thing, but whoever's having the baby and the partner of the person having the baby. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." And he's like, "No, I don't, it's not mine." And I was like, "Oh, oh, I mean, what do you say? Wow is not good, and fuck
no."
I was like, "Oh, damn, okay." And he's like, "Well, she'll be back soon." And I didn't know. I had kind of assumed that she was out because she was working, but I don't know. Maybe she was out literally at the clinic when I showed up. He was waiting for her. I honestly don't know. But anyway, she ended up coming home, and she was, "Oh, hi, Manson, how are you doing?" Gave me a hug or whatever. And I'm like, "Hey, how you going?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's really hot in here, so we're going to go to this hotel." And I'm like, "Okay."
I'm sorry, just for clarification, I just want to make sure that I've got everything clear here. So you're saying that when you hung out with him, like initially when you met up, he said that Evan was away at that point, and he said she's having an abortion. And you don't know if that meant like literally at that moment she was, or if that meant like at some point down the road.
Right. I didn't know if he meant she is having one. It wasn't specified, that he didn't come out and say she is at the doctor right now having an
Right.
abortion, but he also didn't say that she wasn't. So I wasn't sure what that meant, and it was kind of presented in a factual way that this is happening, and I didn't take that as an invitation to start poking. So I was just like, oh,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and so then then you said that after that, sometime later, Evan arrived, and so and then you piled into a car and went to this hotel. But Manson was very clear. He said to you, she's having an abortion. It's not mine, or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. It was literally like, it'll be like 12 years ago in June.
Yeah.
So I remember exactly what he said, but he basically told me the gist of it was that an abortion is occurring / will occur / has occurred, and then it is not my child. And I was like, because I was kind of like, do I ask like, how do you feel about that? Or I'm really sorry. Or
it's very awkward.
It's until somebody gives you an idea of how they're feeling, you're not really sure how to say something. You really, in this situation, do not want to misspeak.
More maybe understated. Were you able to read, though, any sort of expression? Like, did he seem upset or resigned to it or annoyed, or what was kind of, I'm sure
sort of resigned. He was just kind of a little down. He was a little down from where he usually is. And he just said it very like matter of factly and didn't elaborate. So I
did he seem angry at her?
He wasn't angry. No, he didn't seem angry. And he was not angry, upset. He was just like, he was discomfited or something. There's a word here that I'm missing, but he wasn't
happy,
thrilled.
But he wasn't like, he wasn't saying like this freaking bitch, cheated on me, which you would expect. Most people look, I mean, most people, if someone cheats on them and then that person gets pregnant, most of us are going to have a very unforgiving attitude, or going to be angry or whatever. And sounds like Manson was actually doing the opposite, that he cared about this woman and he was supporting her and trying to help her get through this. And especially, the way you described it. And so anyway, so thanks for shedding light on that. Again, this is not something that you're saying in response to what Evan Rachel Wood is recently alleging. This is something that you've been consistently saying for several months now. And again, this was the first place to even report this story about the abortion. So what she's saying about that is not correct. She's lying about the abortion when she says that, because it wasn't Manson's child, and Manson was very supportive of her. So we know she's lying about that. Another thing that I wanted to bring up with you, I have seen Phoenix Rising. I've seen the first part that premiered at Sundance Online, and she goes to great lengths in that to depict Evan Rachel Wood, to depict herself as being an extremely naive teenager, a naive 19-year-old when she was dating Manson. And 18, 19-year-old. And she says that, and she said before that she didn't know that he had a drug problem. And in that documentary, she really makes it seem like Manson was forcing drugs on her. In fact, her mother at one point says that on the set of Heart-Shaped Glasses, that he was basically kept feeding her cocaine and absinthe. And so I'm just curious. I know that you hung out with Evan Rachel Wood, both with Manson, but also one-on-one. Even when she and Manson had broken up, you spent a night hanging out with her and partying with her. What was her experience with drugs? Would you say that she was inexperienced? Would you say that, in your observation, that Manson was pushing drugs on her?
I don't think that was the case at all. Like, she knew what she was doing specifically. Like, the very first time that the three of us really spent a significant amount of time hanging out, if we exclude sitting on the bus together, was at that Halloween party. And she had drugs on her, and it was like her task. She took the drugs into the bathroom and then put them down on the counter and immediately cut like a series of lines, like very deftly and expertly using one of my Hollywood video card or whatever. But she was just and it was out. I mean, she could have done it in her sleep. She was very practiced with how she did it. And also at the hotel, after I took them to the hotel, we didn't have any drugs until she called her guy and he brought them to her room and then she put them on the table. And again, she cut lines for all of us because that was what she did. And again, you mentioned how I hung out with her later after they had broken up. Also in New York, she had some with her. And this time she'd gone from like having a baggie to having like a little brown vial about this big. So she knew it's like, keep it protected from light and air. And she was, tapping it out. I mean, she was very practiced. These were not the motions of someone who was like, so how much do I put down? Do I do like, is that too big? Is that a lot? I don't, here, you just take how much as you want and I'll do whatever. No, she knew like exactly, like the ones she was cutting for me were too big. I had to cut them down. I'm like, but she had no problem.
If people will go back, if they're curious and look at the longer interview that you did with me, one of the things that I remember you talking about is how when you spent one night that you spent hanging out with her and Manson at was it an apartment? I can't remember, but anyway, you were hanging out late and partying and stuff, and you said that she was, as I remember, she was the one who was the procurer of drugs. In other words, she was the one who was like, oh, I can get us some of this or whatever, right?
Mm. Yeah, she had those numbers. She like, I don't know how long she was in New York filming Mildred Pierce, but she knew someone to call that would show up. He was quick too. He showed up and dropped it off. I mean, it wasn't like 15 minutes or less, like or half an hour, however long Domino's gives you. But it was a quick turnaround, and it was good stuff. So she was not fucking around with it.
And you were there at the Halloween. You were there at the party in Las Vegas where she claims that that she was more or less basically, the drugs were pushed on her and whatever, and someone drew a Hitler mustache on her. But in fact, you were there and you've said before in the previous interview that she was enthusiastically taking drugs and she was the one who enthusiastically painted on the Hitler mustache, right?
Yeah, we were in the bathroom. It was Evan, it was Manson, it was myself and one other person. And after she did the line, she had her line. And then while we were like messing about with going through our turn, she had the eyeliner, a pencil in her hand. It was in the mirror going like this and like drew it exactly, what it looks like. And she drew it looking at herself in the mirror, watching herself draw it on.
Okay, so something else, one more thing I want to get to. She said that that Marilyn Manson, was really into extremely kinky stuff. That he assaulted her. That he shocked her with a sex toy and tied her up and would locked her up in a bad girl's room, and et cetera, et cetera. So she paints a picture of him as being an extremely sexually kinky person, someone who is very into perversion and so forth. But I remember from the interview that you did with me, you said that when you were hanging out with them one night and Manson had walked away, and I think that you had been up pretty late drinking with them or whatever, that she said something to you about their sex life and it was very different. So tell me again, what was that? What was the situation?
As you said, Manson had walked away and I was well inebriated. The sun was coming up. It was the early morning. And I was like, I'm never going to get a chance to get her to ask this question to her. And I'm not ever going to get probably this messed up around them again. This is a bad idea because I'm thinking about asking this question. So fuck it, I'll ask her. So I was like, so you and Manson, sexy time. Yes. Good. Yes. Good. Sexy. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, so like dirty, kinky, like, I've seen the videos, I've read the book. I'm like, I am getting such just dirty, nasty, amazing, kinky vibes from him. I'm like, is it like the roller coaster that I think it is? Or is it, she's like, it's really not. She's like, I know, I'm sorry to disappoint you. She goes, he's very sweet. He's very loving. She's like, it's very boyfriendy. She's like, it's not always like missionary. Like it's not boring. She's like, it's very good, but it's very, it's kissing, it's tender, it's very like love sex and not like, she's like, it's not hardcore, it's not scary, it's not anything like what you would think from, from looking at him or his videos. She's like, it's not like that.